Welcome back to Gaming Assembled. Today is a CK3 A Game of Thrones Spotlight episode on the island of Lonely Light. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, we'd love to hear from you. So like, comment and subscribe to the channel and interact with us on social media. And thank you to Philip Mansour and Damo Lepuskin for subscribing already. Let's get started. Okay, so welcome back to Westeros and welcome back to another one of our Region Spotlight special episodes. So, as before, we are looking at a request from someone in the comments, and this one is on Lonely Light, which is a bit of a trek from anywhere else, really. It is, as you can see, fairly far even from the coast. Lonely Light has a bit of a story in the lore, and it seems to be a bit of a confused story in a way. I've read a couple of different versions of it, and I suppose that really adds to a little bit of the flavour of the place, in the sense that, you know, even in the lore there's a bit of confusion. It's a bit like in real history, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. There's the truth and there's facts, and they're not always necessarily the same thing. And the idea is that some versions of events form differently to others and things like that. And in one account, the idea is that there were people, Lord Farwind, who is the origin of this house, he was sailing from the Iron Islands over in Iron Man Bay, and the idea was that they got a bit lost and things like that, and they accidentally found this island, which is way out west. Not the most westerly islands, but we can talk about that in a minute. But the idea is they accidentally came upon these islands, should I say. And in one story is they discovered them and they built the tower, okay, which is known as Lonely Light, okay, the entire place. There's the Lonely Tower on Lonely Light. And in one version of the story that I've read, they came across the islands and they built a tower there and claimed it as their own, and the generations followed of them living there and ruling from there. And that's great. In the other version of the story that I've read, they came across the islands and there was already the tower there. It's made of a strange sort of black stone that was oily to the touch. There was already a fire going on the top of it, and there was an old man there who was basically the keeper of this light. He didn't speak any language that they could recognise, and he had a library there, which had books, some written in the common tongue, some written in Old Valyrian, some written in languages they weren't able to translate. But the idea was he was a keeper of the light, basically. And from that, the idea was they stayed a few days, and they thought he originally was a shipwreck and wanted to leave, and hence the light, sort of like a signal beacon, but it wasn't that. And they soon realised that he wasn't going to leave, he wanted to stay. And the idea is that they stayed for a few days, and in the end they settled there, and it was the second son of Lord Farwind who was granted this land, so to speak, the islands, and his third son, he was instructed to study the ways of the old man. And so a sort of like a cult was formed, sort of keeping the fire burning, and it sort of went on over time, with apprentices coming to learn the ways of the, you know, maintaining the light, I suppose, and that sort of thing. So those are the sort of two stories behind the Lonely Light that I've managed to find. I'm not sure which one is more accurate. If you know, by all means, talk to me in the comments. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. But there you go. Those are what I've read. I mean, in terms of playing as the Lonely Light, setting off a game in this starting position, I mean, the map, it looks great in a sense. I mean, there's not a lot to it. I mean, in the lore, from what I understand, this is meant to be, I think, 8 islands, Lonely Light being the biggest. And so maybe as a way to improve this a bit further, they could add in, more holdings on here. Obviously, we've just got the main castle holding. But from what I've read in the information about the lore, there's other islands which have got farms on. Have got, there's some that are warmer than others. There's some that are unoccupied. I think adding in extra slots that you can develop in that sense would certainly be a nice touch and things. But as it stands at the moment, there's just the one. And I suppose you could sort of try and, from a roleplay perspective, include the idea of those other farms and things, those other islands, by having farms and other bits and bobs sort of scattered about in terms of your buildings. Maybe that's the way you simulate that in this case. But certainly, from what I've read, that should naturally be there. There's 8 islands total, and that's just the biggest. But even that is obviously a lot smaller than obviously over here. And so, in terms of your starting position, you are fairly isolated. You start as Lord Gilbert of Lonely Light, who, again, his traits, I'm not sure if these are locked or whatever, but I think this one probably is. Again, in the things that I've read, there's this idea, and I don't know if it's all the characters, no, it's just that guy. In the, I suppose, in the books and things, this guy does crop up. I think it's Feast for Crows, I think. I might have got that wrong. Correct me, by all means. But I think it is. And the idea is after Balon Greyjoy dies, he puts himself forward to be king of the Iron Islands. And the idea is that he promises all sorts of weird things where he can, everyone's going to have their own. They're going to sail off fine lands over in the west, over here somewhere, I guess. And everyone's going to be a king, and everyone's wife's going to be a queen, and all this sort of stuff. And they all basically laugh him out the room with the sounds of things. And so that's basically it. And so the impression is that he's mad, which I think it's a nice touch that he's got the lunatic trait. So that's certainly that. As a character, as I say, I don't know if his traits are locked or not. If they are, and if this is who he is, then, as I said, the lunatic trait, definitely that holds true to what I know of him. The idea as well is that the people of Lonely Light are supposed to be warrior scholars, in regards to this library that I mentioned in the tower. And so, again, that would fit with that, if that is the case. The fact that he's fairly good, he's got good learning score, learning stats, that would certainly fit with that. So that's, maybe that would hold true. In terms of the starting position, though, as I say, you are fairly limited to a certain degree. You've not got many men at all. And your island is fairly underdeveloped. I mean, development of 3, I think it was, and all you've got is a small harbour. That's basically it. You've got very little of anything. So it's a challenging start, to say the least. Perhaps maybe, I don't know, some reaving and, some aspects, some investment in the development of your holdings. Maybe that's the way to go in terms of starting off. That is certainly something you could consider. The other factor you could consider is that your family is, although you are the head of your house, it's not the only house in the wider dynasty. So you'll notice here, look, the Farwind dynasty is a bit more widespread. There are 3 houses. Yours is just a cadet branch, okay? As is this one. And so the idea is they have some lands over on, I suppose, should we call it in the mainland, on Great Wick, basically, and things. And so I think is that Great Wick? I think it is, isn't it? But anyway, the main islands here, they have some lands here. And so this chap here, so he has these lands, and then here. And these ones, I think they're cousins. I think that's right. I'm not sure if they're actual cousins or just different. I think they're probably, if you go back in time, they probably were. But the idea is they're distant branches of the same overall family. So, you've not got claims on each other's lands as far as I can see, but the idea is that you are under the same dynasty. So, in terms of a roleplay perspective, I mean, the way I see it is that your character is something, he's looked down upon, to say the least. He's a bit out of the way, he's a lunatic, he's not someone who people respect all that much. So, and you've got this history of saying, look, I could be king, I could be, I know I suppose in time-wise that's not actually happened yet, but there's a precedent in terms of the law of your character saying, look, I want to be king, I could do this. They might have left him out of the room, but he still said it. And so from a roleplay perspective, it could be that you try and make that happen in your actual game. Now, I mean, the way you would go about that, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, there's not much in the way of, ways to try and get yourself any land in the mainlands here. I mean, there's not much opportunity because everyone has got way, way, way more men than you. I mean, there's one or two people like that where it's a bit of a nearer gap, but even so, I mean, he's still got, even with 300 and odd men, he's still got over 3 times as many men as you. So it's going to be a big ask in terms of trying to find somebody who would be a target to sort of start off with. So, I mean, a clever use of alliances, perhaps utilising your family connections. It could be, I mean, he's probably the weakest one that we've seen so far. In fact, I'm certain he is. And things. And so it could be that, trying to pick off one of your, get an ally and trying to get some of these territories and things. Maybe that's your way forward. Maybe that's your way in. Reunite the lands of House Farwind. Try and sort of get a foothold on the main islands over here. Maybe that's your way in and your way to power. But from a roleplay perspective, I think that's as good a story as any. The idea of, trying to make that claim happen, make that claim a reality. Saying, look, I can do this. I mean, especially if in the if in the course of events, something were to happen to the Greyjoys. I mean, obviously they've got, Balon, obviously he's there, he's a young man, there's no particular danger. I mean, he's got plenty of sons himself, there's no danger of them dying out, but, I mean, bad things happen on their own, and, things do sometimes just go that way, but who's to say that it can't come with a little bit of help? I mean, it might be that's something that's in the long run you do. I suppose depending on the character and the nature of your character. I mean, he's ambitious, so that would fit. The idea of trying to work your way up the ranks and trying to get some land and trying to find a footing and one day trying to take over the Lord Paramountcy of the Iron Islands, that would certainly, I think, fit with the story, that would fit with the character, that would fit with the lore to a certain degree. So there are things you can do on that you could consider. I mean, in terms of the religion that they follow the Drowned God. And your island is actually one of the holy sites. So that's another aspect that you could try and weave into the sort of story, so to speak. I mean, it's an unreformed faith. Obviously, the Iron Islands control all of them, but maybe you could try and... Well, they control enough, I think. I think it's 3 that you need to reform the faith. But, it could be that you try and take over these yourself. You try and take these... It could be that, I mean, obviously, things like maybe you go down the route of being some sort of religious fanatic and you try and sort of capture the other holy sites and things. I mean, they're fairly well spread out, I think, but to a certain degree. But it's something that you could consider if you so wished. Is there more than one there? That one's there. Where's that one? I don't know where that one is. Oh, it's down here. I don't know why I was looking over there. But anyway, so the point is that you've got the options there in terms of, yeah, there you go. I don't know where the other one is. It must be Mermaid Rocks. I don't know. Go to location. That's there. That one's there. Ah, there we go. Sorry, I'm looking at two separate island groups. There we go. So the point is that, you know, you could go down that route as well. You could try and bring out the faith in there. That aspect of things, as I say, they've got this sort of Fireburners cult going on. Maybe you could make a story out of that. You know, try and spread that cult, so to speak. I know that it doesn't represent in the game. It would be really nice if, say, on your council it had some aspect of that. That would be a really nice touch. You know, I mean, if anyone wants to mod that in, then I think that'd be lovely. You know, that'd be great. It'd be really, really sort of cool aspect to things. And again, there's no particular decisions that link into this lore, so to speak. But I don't know. Maybe that can be developed over time. Your men-at-arms, not the captains, the men-at-arms, that's what we want. They're your standard reavers, which I think all the Ironborn dynasties can access. I don't think there's anything unique there. Again, that would perhaps be nice, something to do with some reference, some hat tip towards, you know, the light or something, you know, this sort of cult kind of thing going on. That would feed into them as a really nice roleplay campaign to do. But, you know, you've got some options there. I mean, the idea of them being, you know, seafarers and things like this, and they're very much the, I suppose, well, it's about raiding. It's about, well, reaving would be the word that they would use. It's a very much a warrior culture, isn't it? And so, you know, it lends itself well to being a little boisterous with your neighbours. So, and I think if you're going to start there, that might be the way you have to go. You have to sort of look down that route. But I think there's a good, as I say, a good precedence for that in terms of your character's background history and things like that. So, do let me know what you think. If you can think up of a different sort of role-play sort of side to things, I'd be very happy to hear of it. But I think that there is scope there for this character. It is a very unique starting place. Obviously, you start as a duchy level character, which again gives you some advantages. So I think there's a lot of scope there. I think there are things that the developers could do to improve it further, and we've talked a bit about that. You've got some children for alliances. You've got some resources to work with to a certain degree, but not that much. But it would certainly be a challenge, I think, for anyone to play as, but a very rewarding one. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do let me know if you have any other requests that you'd like me to do in terms of these Region Spotlight episodes. I'd be very happy to take you up on that and continue to try and develop this little mini-series. But until then, please do like, comment and subscribe to the channel. And as ever, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.